All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming to the 11:15 session. The session right before lunch. Excited to have you all here today. My name is Corey Edwards, and I work for Adobe. I lead Adobe's Social Media Center of Excellence, which equates to effectively a social media operations group that is ultimately responsible for our governance, our enablement, our centralized approach to measurement, and for trying out and piloting a lot of new things. I work really closely with our various social media strategists that sit within our respective business units and that are actively trying to do social media on behalf of Adobe. I come from Salt Lake City, which is where Adobe's digital marketing headquarters are based. And I have with me today a real-life team from the wild who has agreed to come and talk to all of us. Agreed to be kind of a lab rat of sorts. In fact, actually, in January of this year, perhaps this will ring a bell with some of you. In January of this year, there was an article that appeared on Medium by a teenager named Andrew Watts. This article, while in and of itself may not seem all that unique by its title, since every teenager probably has some perspective and a view on social media, for some reason, this particular article, because of the insights shared by this teen, it led to this kind of frenzy. This article and a couple that followed ultimately were viral in their own nature. And I received emails from colleagues in the industry, from colleagues that sit within Adobe. My own CMO, Ann Lunes from Adobe, she sent me a link and she says, "You've got to read this. This is incredible. You should read what this teenager's saying about social. It's so great." So I reached out to Andrew and started to engage Andrew in a conversation about his perspectives on social media, and wanted to understand some of his thoughts on some of the things that we're doing at Adobe. And over the last several months since then, he and I have continued to have some conversations. And when I was in discussion with the folks from Social Shakeup about what we could potentially do for this session today, it was right in the middle of some conversations that I was having with Andrew. And so I said, what if we brought one of these real-life teams and put them in front of everybody and actually talk to them? I bet people would like that. So that's what we're going to do today. And so Andrew, stand up for a second. Our real-life team. Right? Yeah, we're giving a round of applause. That's great. So welcome, Andrew. We promise we won't poke and prod too much. Before we get to Andrew, I want to spend just a couple of minutes. I want to give a bit of background and some perspective on this rising generation. And some of this is going to come from some research that we've done at Adobe. And some of this is going to come from just broader industry insights. So Andrew, in addition to his role as a teen in the world, is a student at the University of Texas. He is going to school in Austin, home of the famous Salt Lick, and I miss the Salt Lick dearly from my days working for Dell. But it's summer, and as teens like to do when they're in college, they get an internship. And he is interning now with Facebook. Facebook reached out to him, among the many brands that reached out to him based on his insights, to talk with him and said, "Hey, we want to have you come and do an internship with us." So he is doing an internship with them, a marketing internship. Quite often, I'm asked to to spend time talking with teenagers. I actually teach as an adjunct professor at Brigham Young University, and even though I kind of look like I might be a teen, I'm actually not the teen. If some of you walked in and thought I was the teen, I totally get it. I'm 38, believe it or not, but he actually may look older than me. But I oftentimes have these conversations with people that look like they're my peers, and in these conversations, I'll ask them questions about their use of social. And one of the things I found to be most intriguing was to do the simple raising of hands. And if you have a chance, please do this. If you get a group of teenagers together, get them together and say, how many of you are using Facebook today? And what you're going to hear are some snickers and laughs, and you're going to see a handful of people put their hands up. And there's probably a whole lot more that are actually using it who are maybe a little embarrassed to raise their hands in front of their peers to admit it. Then you proceed to move on. Well, how many of you are using Twitter? And a few more hands go up. They're a little more confident, although maybe totally not sure why they're using Twitter. And then as you progressively go and you ask about Instagram, most of the hands in the room shoot up. And then there's an intriguing thing that I found is when you start to ask things like, are you using Yik Yak? Boom, all the hands go up. Are you using Snapchat? All the hands in the room go up. So I want to talk. We're going to spend some time talking about this today. What I feel like it's ultimately a generational divide in the way that a younger generation is using social. And Andrew's got some great perspective on the old guard of social networks and on the new guard. So we're going to spend some time talking about some of the emerging social networks and how teens today are using those. The context on this group, and I know you all are subject to article after article about how do you market to the millennial. I don't want to spend time talking about that, but I do want to set context onto who this group is. And so if we talk about this generation, I think it's important to understand this is a group of people that in their jobs today are really quite aloof from their roles and their employers. They consider themselves actively disengaged in their jobs that they have. And yet this is a group that has massive spending power. We did a study earlier this year that said, all right, well, there's so much talk about marketing to millennials. Let's talk about the millennial as a marketer themselves. As a marketer, how are they different perhaps as a marketer, and what are their perspectives? And what ultimately is driving them. And so I want to spend just a minute talking about some of the key insights we found from this group of primarily 20-somethings, and we did look into the teens as well, but looking at some of the key findings that we had that came from this. First, there's a belief among these millennials who are marketers that marketing today is very different from when they started their careers. And you say, well, did they just start their careers? Well, I think that in and of itself is pretty telling. That in the last few years, they believe that marketing has changed dramatically. And in fact, more than half of them believe that in the last year alone, it has changed more drastically than in the previous 5. I'd be curious by a show of hands whether this group agrees with that. I believe in the last year, marketing has changed more drastically than in the previous 5. All right, good showing of hands there. They are challenged. They are concerned about their role as marketers as a young marketer. More than half feel challenged. A third of them feel like they're underprepared for the changes that are happening in the marketplace. A quarter of them report that they're just overwhelmed with it. And then I found it to be intriguing that more than half of these millennial marketers, they don't think that their company necessarily has the chops to keep up. With all the changes happening in the marketplace and this realization that, man, the last year, it's changed more than the previous 5 combined, I don't think my company that I'm working for can keep up. Maybe that's why we see 72% of them saying that they're actively disengaged from their work. They're marketers, they're working in an organization, they're young for sure, Sometimes they feel like maybe they know more than the rest of the marketing organization, but they certainly are concerned with their ability to keep up. And when we asked them what were the driving concerns, the greatest challenges that they felt like were posed to their organization as they move forward trying to address challenges in marketing, there were three key things that came up that I thought were fascinating. They were worried about the Internet of Things. How is that going to change my ability as a marketer to reach people? When my refrigerator tells me that I'm about out of orange juice, gosh, it sure seems like there's an opportunity for Tropicana in there somewhere to be sending me some marketing notification, right? Some ad, some tweet, something that is connected in to the Internet of Things. If in fact, one of my friends recently, I thought this was fascinating. He pulled out his phone and he showed me an app that he had on his phone for his home sprinkling irrigation system. And he showed me, he turned it on for me. He's like, I'm going to turn it on for you. And he showed me how it reports how dry it is because of the sensors that they use. And so we talked about this as well. And gosh, if you're someone like a Scott's, fertilizer, how are you in this world of Internet of Things? How are you trying to figure out how the marketer can play into that? When this app is telling a customer that his lawn is getting dry and he's getting brown spots, there should be an opportunity for marketers to get in it. So that's their first concern. Mobile and wearable technologies was another thing. They just worry about their employer's ability to keep up and to keep pace with that. And then social marketing. That was the final one, and obviously what has been the subject of a lot of discussion here at the conference so far. Through it all, they believe that there is still great opportunity. There's this sort of door that is, the light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak, and by far the majority, more than 9 in 10 of these millennial marketers see the changes in the industry as an opportunity more than a threat. And more than 2/3 of them, they believe that we're starting into what they believe is going to be a golden age of marketing. Because I believe a lot of what is happening in these changes in technology. As a final point here, before we invite Andrew to come up, this is a group that they crave more opportunities, and I think that this is probably not surprising. They crave something new. They crave the opportunity. They're coming out of college. They believe there's great hope for them. But with the changes in the marketplace, 82% of them believe that they personally have got to find a way to reinvent themselves as marketers in order to succeed in this changing world. Okay, so with that said, that's gonna lay the background for our conversation here with Andrew. So Andrew, can I invite you to come up and take your seat here? Please join me in giving Andrew a warm. So, can you all hear me okay? I decided not to use mics, but I'm hoping that that's okay. So we're gonna need a project here.
I'll yell.
All right. So Andrew, he flew in this morning on a red eye. He left California, San Francisco. You flew out of SFO.
Yeah.
Last night at 10:30 and was on a red eye and didn't sleep. But he's a teenager, so he's fine. He doesn't need to sleep, right? Okay, so let's establish kind of the delineation between generations here. We talk about millennials. There's Gen Z. For the sake of this discussion, anytime we talk about millennials, we're kind of talking about that 18 to 34-year-old, again, sweet spot in the 20s, and then the Gen Z is really kind of the 2 to 18, I think is the way that's being classified now. So there's technically a new generation that's being named, and there's discussions as to what they got to be. You're no longer a teenager, right?
No, 20 as of about 2 or 3 weeks ago.
All right, so
shouldn't even be here.
Cancel the whole session. 4 weeks ago, May 6th, you turned 20.
Yes.
Did you, as you closed out that segment of your life, I know you posted quite a bit. You blogged, you posted on Medium. Did you write anything to kind of summarize your thoughts as a teenager and kind of finishing up, apart from these multiple pieces you did on social networks?
I guess, so my final post that I did on Medium was kind of a summary of everything that occurred from January 2nd to that day, also including what happened beforehand. So when I posted the original article, I obviously didn't expect anything to come of it. It was posted on January 2nd, which was a Friday. I posted it at 11 o'clock at night. So really didn't optimize it for any sort of press or publicity coverage at the time. But that being said, there's a narrative in the most recent one I talked about that didn't really get shown a lot in the other pieces that I wrote. It more talked about how it affected me from a psychological perspective, like what was the experience of becoming viral, and then also what led to me actually writing the post as well.
So talk a little bit about it. I find it intriguing that it was January 2nd when you wrote this. As a teenager, doing a good job of using his, it's New Year's resolution. I'm gonna
It wasn't even.
Good job with that.
I would love to say that it was that, but what it was I had an online accounting class that ended on January 1st, and so then after that ended, I was really bored and just really wanted to write something.
Wow.
But so what got me thinking about it, right, was that I've known Evan Spiegel, the CEO of Snapchat, since around 2012. When I was in high school at the time, my high school was one of the first ones to really catch on to Snapchat and start using it.
It was the second one, you said, right?
About the second one. I mean, there's no yeah. So it wasn't Evan introducing it. It was Evan's cousin went to Orange County High School. I forget the name of it, and that high school was like the first one to really start using Snapchat. I had a friend there. The friend showed it to me, and then I started kind of introducing it to my school and to my peer group. So from there, I worked at the school newspaper at the time. I started a technology section. And for the first issue of the technology section of the newspaper, I wanted to have an interview with somebody, and so it was Evan. At the time when we had the interview, it was a phone interview. Evan was still working out of his father's living room with two other people for Snapchat. Eventually invited me over to start talking with him, and we met up every so often just to catch up with each other. And the most recent time we met was actually the day after the Sony hack occurred with Snapchat, and all of the data for Snapchat with the Sony hack was released. And so it was really interesting because a lot of our conversation dealt with the public perception of Snapchat and how people viewed the use case of Snapchat. And especially after my meeting with him and as time went on, a lot of technology blogs started writing a lot about Snapchat because of all of the information that came out through Sony, and gave their opinion on what Snapchat was and what they understood it to work in the social landscape. And I just found myself disagreeing with almost all of it. A lot of people really didn't understand the point of Snapchat. They thought Snapchat was a way to send nefarious messages to people. They thought Snapchat was just stupid, and people didn't really get it. And so kind of with that frustration of me, because I really got Snapchat at that point. With that frustration, I wanted to write a post based off of that. And then from there, I just thought I'd throw in other social networks that I thought I also didn't see a lot of people representing well, at least from the technology blogs I would read.
Got it. So before we dive into the post itself and start talking about some of the specific networks, I'd love to. It seems to me that there are a couple things happening here. At each progressive generation, it seems to me that there's greater gaps between. If I look at the baby boomers versus Gen X and Gen X and the millennials, it just seems like each progressive generation we're seeing more and more a disparity and a gap between.
Definitely. Yeah.
What's your perspective on the reasons for that? Is it just technology based?
I think it's something that's happened throughout history, that we're now just kind of naming generations. I think throughout history, with technology increasing as well as major world events occurring, it kind of divides up people, and that people were all there to experience one thing. The invention of the automobile, the invention of television, radio, people were there for that specific thing. And so it's kind of, we're in the time now where my generation is the people who didn't necessarily grow up with computers, but had it introduced pretty early in their lives. And the generation that's coming up, Z, is they haven't known anything different. than having iPads and iPhones and everything.
Yeah, it's like common for them. I think
Yeah.
in the U.S. it's common for them to have multiple iPads and iPhones and iPods, and it kind of permeates the house. We were talking earlier about, I asked you a question, I said, what do you think about the label of millennial? Because I feel like it almost in many respects there's a stigma that's now associated with it, almost a negative stigma. People talk about the millennials and the millennial generation. Talk about your perspective on that.
Oh, I hate it. I think it's just kind of, for me, it seems like a really broad brush to paint with. I feel that, especially when talking about millennials, it seems like we're almost like zoo animals, that people are just kind of looking at us and
like bringing one from the wild.
Exactly.
He wasn't from the zoo. I got him from the wild.
Exactly. Like even that language, it just seems like we're just like so foreign, and like labeling us as something different than everyone else just makes us seem more foreign.
Yeah.
Like to the population as a whole, when we're really not. I think people like build us up to be like this huge thing, like this elusive being a millennial, but it's like I think people just need to chill out about it.
You know, you do have a much cooler label. I think millennial sounds a whole lot better than Gen X or baby boomers. You got
I agree with that at least.
So your article, when you published it, as I mentioned before, it amounted as this to me. It was like this sonic boom that across the industry was just being shared really broadly, and I was hearing about it from all sorts of different people. You get into an analysis of the social networks, and so I think what I'd like to do, and I'd like to start getting audience questions here as well. I'd like to dive into looking at what I would look at as the old guard of the social networks, right? So let's take a look at Facebook and Twitter, some of the others, and then I want to get into some of the more of the emerging networks and just get your perspective on those. So let's start with Facebook.
Okay. It's a rough one for me to talk about right now, but I'll talk
So
about
I told him, I said, I can't make this entirely easy on you.
Yeah.
So here's the hard part. He's now an intern for Facebook.
Yeah.
But I want to read a quote that came from his article. Okay. Facebook, he says, in terms of what's the deal with Facebook among teens, his quote is, "It's dead to us."
Nice.
And the next part of this is what I think was the most quoted piece of his article as it circulated. Facebook is something we all got in middle school because it was cool, but now is seen as an awkward family dinner party that we just really can't leave.
Yes.
So I can't address, obviously you can't speak on behalf of Facebook here,
No.
but talk about Facebook. What's the deal with it?
I can talk about my mindset. So like, kind of where I came from with that, and honestly, when I wrote this whole article, I did not think that any of it would be quoted or taken out of context. When I saw like a bunch of tweets just take that out of context, I was like, oh, that's weird. But anyways,
Welcome to the world of social media.
yeah. So when looking at what I felt like at the time is I felt like people really couldn't express themselves on Facebook. I felt that, like for me personally, right, if I go to Twitter, I have a defined audience of people who follow me. I have marketers and technology people. So if I post something regarding marketing or technology, it will get activity. If I post something not regarding that, it won't. Facebook is just like a smorgasbord of everyone I've ever met, like kind of, maybe. And so then it's just kind of this really diverse group of people that you can't really, the only thing they have in common is you. So the only thing I post on Facebook personally is something I would like release in a press release for like life events. Something that's just like a thing that's happening in my life that everyone can kind of on Facebook see. Like I feel like that's different than me sharing. I would rarely share like a news article on Facebook because just the people there are so different, especially if it's like a politically charged news article or anything that could be somewhat controversial. People will just go comment on it or go crazy with it, and I don't want to deal with it.
So the flip side, when we talked about Twitter, it almost seemed like you positioned Twitter as almost the polar opposite now in your use compared to Facebook. Where Facebook, it's like you're going to share the stuff, you're not going to share news articles, it's maybe some of the life events. For Twitter, it's more of the news.
Yeah, it's more
about the use of Twitter.
Yeah, it's more of like commentary, news, really good for social activism. I think Twitter is definitely something that when I first posted the article, and since when I first posted the article, I had maybe 60 followers on Twitter, like nothing. And so after that, and I accumulated more followers from it, I kind of understood more of the power of it. But I think a big barrier to entry for a lot of people my age on Twitter is that the numbers are so present on it. What I mean by that is that you really easily can judge someone based off how many people they're following, how many people follow them, how many likes or favorites their post gets, how many retweets, anything like that. And so there's this metric that you can kind of really quickly judge someone based off of. And because of that, there's a lot of social pressure behind posting on it. I think more than other platforms. There's more metrics on Twitter for you to judge someone because of the favorite and the retweet. I don't think like the reshare on Facebook has really gotten to that point yet where it's really common enough for it to be like a metric that you can kind of look at someone's like reshares and see how popular they are.
Yeah.
But I think on Twitter it's definitely a huge metric, and I think when you start posting stuff on Twitter and you don't get a lot of interactivity with it, it kind of discourages you from posting. And so when you start out, you don't really have anyone following you, and so you don't get any of those tweets. Like you don't get a lot of interactivity with those tweets, and so then you're less likely to continue going on the platform because you're less likely to want to interact with it since you aren't getting as much activity as you would see on Instagram.
Yeah, that's good. All right, so I want to come back to more social networks. Let me ask for questions. Are there folks here that have any specific question they'd like to ask of Andrew? Yeah, please.
I find the last comment you just said interesting because you're talking about the social pressure of engagement on Twitter and how prevalent those numbers are, but those same numbers are just as prevalent on Instagram, and so why do you not feel those same pressures on Instagram as you do on Twitter?
So for a few reasons. So for one, Twitter has more metrics for you to judge off of. So you have the favorite, you have the retweet, you have the reply, following followers. And so that's one more than Instagram, that being retweet, which seems like minute, but is actually a lot, and like the retweet holds a lot of ground. In regards to why I post more on those other networks, it's because Twitter is, I believe people who follow me on Twitter make up less than 5% of the people who I actually like know in real life. And I think it's because there are a lot of strangers, there are a lot of people who, it's more like a professional thing, like it's more of people following me on there because they want to like hear my thoughts. I think that's one way you can approach Twitter. A lot of my friends have private accounts on Twitter for them to actually like vent and talk about their lives. And so I just think with Instagram, you get more interactivity with it because A, more of us are on it, like as a whole, and then B, more of the people, there's more of like people that you know on it. And I think that just in general on Instagram, it's easier for you to like something. It just seems like it's a more fluid way for you to like interact with something. It seems like content on Instagram gets a lot more interactivity than it would on Twitter, at least in my opinion.
So your base of followers on Twitter, you said about 5% of them are people you know.
Yeah.
On Instagram, give me
100%. I have a private account, so I don't let anyone.
All right.
Yeah.
Another question here.
So, as a parent of millennials, we're getting constantly bombarded with what not to do on social. Don't do Snapchat. Don't do this. I take an opposite view. I do social for a living. I think it's a positive aspect. What advice would you give from a positive point of view in terms of the value for teens?
The value of it? Well, I mean, the entire reason I'm here is because of social media. I think like that's like a big thing to mention. Like, there's obviously power behind it, and so I think prohibiting your child from really like using that, kind of stunts their growth in that regard, and kind of makes it so that they don't have like an opportunity like this. That being said, though, I mean, people can be dumb on social media, obviously, and so the best thing I've done on Facebook, honestly, like the best and worst thing, is friend my grandfather. And so what that did was every single post I know my grandfather will read because he has 4 friends. And so that means everything I post on there is something that I would expect him to read. And if he'll be chill with whatever I posted, then I'll post it. If not, then I would go to a private social network like Yik Yak, or I would go to a Tumblr I have that no one knows about. A lot of people my age have one of those, and talk about it there. But for the public-facing networks, I think it's really important to view it as if the parent is there, and I would recommend that parents follow them, follow the kids, and you can get pretty creative about that so they don't know you're following. They know you're following them.
Do teens? So those of us that are practitioners, I think for a lot of years, maybe not so much now, but for a lot of years, in trying to articulate our reasons for doing it, it was we want to have a relationship with our customers, and our customers want to have a relationship with us. Right? It was this thing that I think that, again, maybe we used to espouse that more than we do now. Do teens have a desire to have a relationship with brands through social?
I would say yeah, when it feels kind of natural or organic. I think, so I guess I can do like two polar opposites of the spectrum. So one being like Walmart. Walmart a lot of times will just butt their head in the conversations whenever you say you need something, just in general. So if you're like, wow, I really need to get some milk, Walmart will say, hey, you can get milk here. Like, that seems weird to me.
$1.88 a gallon.
Yeah, like I hate that. Versus something like Taco Bell. I think Taco Bell is probably the best brand online for social media right now for people my age, because they really nail it with how they interact with people. They put in so much time and effort into their Snapchat account that it's like perfect, and so it's something that I'll watch their Snapchat account every time they have something go on there. Their tweets are so good that I'm able to see it on Tumblr with people taking screenshots of it and putting it on Tumblr. I just think that they really have a grasp as to how to interact with their followers, so that it doesn't feel forced. And I also just think like them as like a brand personality, they really pride themselves on being relatable to the generation.
So let's talk about Taco Bell. I want to explore that, and then I'll come over here for a question. I'd like to know what is it about the Taco Bell content that you feel like is so good, right? Because it's not just that it's Taco Bell.
Yeah.
It's something with the content that you've become accustomed to seeing that you like.
They don't use, like, when I see Taco Bell's tweets, I don't feel like it's somebody older who like read Urban Dictionary for the day and picked whatever and then decided to like put a tweet with that in it. Like, I feel like it's someone that's my age, and I feel like it's somebody that kind of like gets our humor and gets our sarcasm too. I think the best brands for people my age are sarcastic, and like that tweet stuff that is really like tongue in cheek. And that's funny, because the thing that we are more likely to get along with and share is humor. I think that's something that kind of brings that would bring me closer to a company, is if I think they're pretty funny.
All right, so you mentioned Urban Dictionary. We were talking earlier about the Twitter account Brands That Say Bay. You guys
Brands saying
that?
Bay, you all need to follow it.
So hopefully, first of all, I hope you understand what Bay is. Brands, increasingly, we're hearing brands talk about, they're saying Bay before anyone else. They're talking about things being on fleek. They're talking about throwing shade. They're saying bye, Felicia. Increasingly, we're seeing this. When a brand uses that language, can they use that in a way that is sarcastic to connect?
For sure, yeah. Like, I think if you go to actually Brands Saying Bay, because I was talking about it with you, we went to their Twitter account. Right now, their first tweet, they take screenshots of social media that's really bad, of like companies trying to target the millennial audience by like using just horrible jargon. And the first one's actually really good in my opinion. It's Domino's, and Domino's kind of did a tongue-in-cheek way of them like contacting millennials by just saying, like, they said something about like their pizza being on fleek today, and then they did hashtag ad, hashtag millennial, and something like that. Like, that just makes it seem like you're joking. And then if you look at the responses for the tweet, it's a lot of like tongue-in-cheek replies from their followers, and that kind of stuff gets us interactive, because you realize as a brand how ridiculous that not only you're being, but that like the space is being right now, and that you're able to kind of sarcastically mock it in a way. And we like sarcastically mocking everything.
Did they use the 3 for the E when they were doing on
No,
fleek?
they don't do that.
That would have been
Brand saying
hateful.
Bay or
Brand saying Bay. Brand saying Bay.
Brand saying Bay, yeah.
Make sure I follow the right.
B-A-Y? Bay?
BAE.
BAE.
Which a lot of people take to mean like babe,
Babe,
but it's
babe.
before anyone else.
Yes.
So like today, you are my before anyone. This is right. Okay, so other questions? Yeah, please.
Well, so I was just going to ask, do you eat Taco Bell?
Yeah.
Do you, like that's something that the content provokes you to go and buy more Taco Bell as well?
Does it promote me to buy more Taco Bell? So from a diet perspective, no. but I can tell you that like the new like steak fajitas just came out for them, and I can tell you that they have like a 12-pack of tacos that you can buy and share with your friends. Like I know there are new products that are coming out, and I can't like tell you what the new pizza is from California Pizza Kitchen or anything like that. I just, especially with their Snapchat account, because their Snapchat account is so good, and it's so like it's not every day. They post maybe once or twice a week on it, and that just makes it like even more special when it's there. It's more, especially since Snapchat goes away in 24 hours. It's just more ephemeral content.
Other questions? Yeah, please.
2 questions. Do you ever just disconnect? And also, when you meet someone that's not on these networks, do you kind of shun them or treat them like they're kind of an awkward, nerdy guy? Or, like we in the old days, we call them the nerdy guys in the back,
So I wish I could get away from social media, but I'm kind of past that point, sadly. As it comes to meeting people, I don't think I've met a person who isn't on Facebook. And if they're not on Facebook, then they're on something. Like I don't think I know anyone. And like that being said, like when you say shun them if they don't have social media, I would say yeah. It's not like it's not shunning, like actively shunning, but it's just like you don't connect with them as much. You don't see what's going on in their lives as much. You aren't able to really like see what they're up to, so you just kind of feel more disconnected. You have to put in more effort as the user to reach out to them via email or text message to chat with them, and it's less easy than just following them on social media and just seeing what they're up to. So I wouldn't say they're shunned like verbally, but kind of just their non-presence on social media makes it so that they're easier to kind of follow up with.
One other quick question is, I'm just curious, as a single young guy, you meet a girl, how do you follow up with them? Is it weird now to kind of stalk them on social media and see what they like? And then,
Is it weird?
I mean, what is that? What is that world like? In the old days, I'm Generation Xer. You would see, we came in an era with no cell phones. You would see a girl, then you would sweat up to get their phone number, and then you had to, come up with the, George Costanza and Seinfeld eat an apple and talk on the phone, and kind of make witty conversation. But now you know all this information about them. How do you? What is it like to ask a girl and say you already know their family, you already know what they like to do, you know what they had for
It's a rough question.
He's not asking for advice.
No, I'm just curious how you deal with that. How do you find that?
It's normally a Facebook friend request. It's kind of how we would do it, because Facebook, just like the term like a friend, it's just kind of, if I went and talked to you in person, like I would never like friend someone without meeting them. That's kind of odd. But like friending somebody, or at least meet them online. I'm saying like I wouldn't see somebody and then just decide to friend them. I would instead want to initiate in some conversation, whether that be through online media or through in person. That being said, just like it's normally just a Facebook friend request and then becoming friends on there, and then I guess seeing what happens from there.
That's the closest we're gonna get to Tinder in our discussion today. Although speaking of team language and Tinder and swiping right for that, did any of you see Hefty's videos by chance? Okay, do yourself a favor, not now, but do yourself a favor and go look at the Hefty, the ones that make the cinch sacks, but also make the red plastic cups. They have these new Hefty Party Mom videos on YouTube where the party moms exclusively use team language, and it's really very funny. Really funny. Have you seen them?
No, I haven't. I just saw today a really good advertisement for Snickers actually in Australia that had construction workers like calling out to women, but they would like talk about how like the patriarchy, like they would like talk about like stuff not what construction workers would say to women passing by on the street. They talked about how like they wouldn't objectify them and stuff like that. It was just very, very funny.
All right, so we've talked about a few of the old guard. I'm going to include Snapchat in the old guard for now. Talk a little bit about. I know, isn't that crazy?
Sorry. Okay.
So
you're putting Snapchat in old?
Yeah. Well, compared to, I mean, if we're talking about things
Emerging
like
networks, I think is
the
a better way
emerging
to say it.
networks, yeah, like Jot and
It's
Plague,
established.
and some of these
It's
other
established.
Yeah, established versus emerging.
So yeah, Evan Spiegel was thinking about it in 2012, which is like forever.
So long ago.
So 2012.
So well, let's talk a little bit about Snapchat. I think there's a lot to talk about with Discover.
Yeah.
Let's start with teen use of Snapchat, which I know is really pervasive, in your experience.
So I mean, Snapchat is kind of, and I talked about in my article too, Snapchat is kind of where everything gets posted. It's something where we feel the most comfortable on there because we have the least amount of family members on there. We have the most amount of people that we actually know on there, because the way Snapchat is designed is super smart actually. The way that they have it so that you can only connect with people from your contact book or by the direct name of them. They also introduce like the snap tags that you're able to take a picture of. But that being said, it's only through people that you know most of the time. And so the majority of your feed is just people that you are connected with. And so then you feel a lot more comfortable posting on there. Versus something like Facebook, you have a bunch of like kind of sort of acquaintances. Instagram the same way. Like I said that I knew everyone who followed me on Instagram, but I didn't say like I'm best friends with everyone who follows me on Instagram. But on Snapchat it's not the same, but I would say it's an even smaller pool of friends. And an even smaller pool, which means that, and also just the lack of social feedback you get on Snapchat. So you don't get comments, you don't get favorites, you get none of that. You just post your content, you see who saw it. That's it, and I love that, because what that does is it takes off all of the pressure of me wanting to post on the network. It just makes it so much more fluid, and I can throw something up and then just have it stay there, versus on Instagram if something doesn't get a certain amount of likes within a certain amount of time, or if it doesn't get enough interactivity on any social network, it'll most likely go down. I'll delete it.
What did you think about the move by Snapchat to invite news outlets to have more of a presence there? Do you feel like that is something that's resonating with you personally or with the others that you talk to?
As of now, no. I think it's just getting started. Evan talked a lot in his recent Recode interview about kind of where Discover can go. And I think especially coming into the 2016 election, it'll play a really cool role, hopefully. I'd like to see where they go with it in terms of that. As of now, just the lack of notifications, right? So even if let's say I love reading Vice, and so I would love to read Vice daily through Discover. I just forget about that it exists there. I haven't like really developed a habit of going to that page. So if Snapchat allowed me the option to get notification whenever Vice posted their new story, I think that's really important, and I think it's something that would make me visit Discover more. Also, I think them posting it on a 24-hour cycle, meaning that they post one every single day and that's it, kind of makes it. I don't think it plays into Snapchat as a whole, because Snapchat with their stories, right, are kind of continuous throughout the day, until 24 hours, versus currently how it works on Discover is just kind of like a dump, like every 24 hours of like all this new content. I think it'd make a lot more sense to update throughout the day with news stories and new things going on, but I don't know how much time, manpower that would take to actually implement. But I feel like it's something that could probably happen with like a 2016 election thing, and them having a channel dedicated to that, and people updating that as it went on. But I have no clue.
I think it's a really good perspective on the upcoming election. I think you're spot on. I think that Discover can become a really important part of that. It's interesting because I looked at that with so many of these specific media outlets being given that opportunity to have a presence on Snapchat. For me, it suddenly became the most useful part of Snapchat. I was like, this is great. I love it. And yet it sounds like, and I'm hearing this as well from other teenagers, that it's kind of like, take it or leave it. That's not why they got into it.
Yeah, it's the stories, my story, and the world stories that they produce. That's why we're really come back to it.
Great. All right. Another question.
In reference to that, would you find that like Vice would be more interesting to you if it was the person taking their phone doing a Snapchat for another?
So okay, I see
Because when I have little brothers that are 5 years younger than you, and cousins that are your age, and they don't use there's like that opportunity there that has but the news makes no sense to me.
Sure.
I mean, it's great, it's well done.
I can see what
but I
you
haven't
mean.
looked at it in 3 months.
Yeah, because it doesn't really, and like I said, it kind of goes to an overall theme. It doesn't really fit with what the rest of the Snapchat product offers. It's kind of something completely different. And that being said, it would make a lot of sense to me for, like, let's say there was a conflict somewhere, for Vice to have some sort of formal news article in the beginning describing what's happening, and then going to more of that, like, on-the-ground footage with a snap, with taking it from Snapchat and posting it. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Because they're curating that, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah, they curate it every 24 hours.
But I'm saying, like,
Oh.
I was on Lake Michigan yesterday, and you could do a lake side pitch or whatever. They did it maybe a week ago.
Oh, yeah,
That's-
they curate it, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that would make a lot more sense.
They have people who go through.
Out of curiosity, how many here have opened a Snapchat account? So most people, okay. How many of you checked or posted Snapchat in the last week? All right. That's pretty good.
It's pretty good.
Yeah. Other questions? To the back of the room, please.
I don't get this. I get bored. Well, I get bored easily.
Sorry, I can't hear it. What are you saying? Yeah, go for it.
Right now, I'm a little curious because you're in a position where you're in a generation that everyone's trying to market to.
Yes.
And you've made it pretty clear that you don't like the hard sell. It's definitely more about building relationships.
Exactly.
So, but as time goes on, that's going to turn and you're going to try to sell to like my kids.
Sure.
How do you see that going? Like, is it going to just become softer and softer to the point where you don't even know you're being sold to, but all of a sudden you have these products? Or
I think, yeah. So like what you're saying, like subliminal messaging. I don't like he said earlier, like the marketing has changed more in the last year than it has in 5 years. I have no clue where it'll go, especially by the time that I'm able to market to your kids. I would say if I could because that wasn't really a good answer. If I could say, it would probably be softer. Like it would still go away from the hard sell and become more like a relationship than the TV ad, like advertising something. It'd be more low key and more integrated into products. I think that's kind of where it's going as a whole. More of the brand integration into news outlets, which is a whole other discussion, into video games, movies, etc. That kind of helps you build a relationship with a brand.
Well, just a quick little bit. On Meerkat, you have 200 people, and someone just posted, asked a question, is Snapchat just for porn?
No.
So right now on Meerkat, 200 people watching, and that's someone to ask the question.
Oh.
We'll get to Meerkat, you Meerkatters.
Yeah. No.
And
So
appearance
that's
numbers.
that was literally the whole thing about why I posted the article in the first place, right? Is that's what everyone said Snapchat was for, nefarious messaging, which I guess for. But it's not for that. It's for, as I've mentioned, it's for that kind of ephemeral content. You feel a lot more comfortable on it because you're able to really express yourself without the use of like the filters, you know what I mean, all the photo editing, etc. on there. You just feel more like connected to the people that you're talking with. You don't feel like you're putting up this like facade of yourself onto a social media platform. And you don't have that kind of feedback so that you can see, did people like you know, the feedback of, did people like me today or not? Like, did people like what I was posting or no?
And yet, I don't think we should discount the fact that part of the reason I think that it has appealed to you and others is that parents aren't there.
That's a like I mentioned before too. That's a big one because like I said, we feel more comfortable on it. Like on Snapchat, I'll see way more party pictures and crazy stuff than I would ever see on Facebook and Instagram. It's kind of what happens is that you take Snapchat is for, and I mentioned this in my article too, like the entire party from beginning to end. Instagram is for the one picture that sums up the night. And Facebook is for all the family-friendly photos that you took while you're there.
All right, so, yes, please.
So I'm 24, and I feel like I'm 100 years older than you. I do, I connect, I feel like I connect better with people in their 30s because, like, our lives growing up were more similar. And, so I work for a university, I'm a recruiter, so I'm supposed to be the young 24-year-old that knows all about the 17-year-olds, and I don't. I feel like I really don't. I actually do read Urban Dictionary. So one of the things that I implemented was a Snapchat never watch people's stories because I don't want them to see that that
Smart,
the university is watching them, because I don't want them to feel that way. But in your opinion, is it intrusive for me to have a Snapchat, for the university to have a Snapchat, or is that interesting? I mean, is that a good recruiting tactic?
It's smart. It's really smart. It's kind of I haven't heard too many like universities
No, less than 1%.
jumping on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so as a whole, no, like I follow brands on Snapchat, like I mentioned Taco Bell. I follow TechCrunch, The Verge.
Yeah.
I guess at this point I haven't really necessarily thought of them like looking at my stuff. Now that you mentioned it, it's kind of weird. But,
I never look at anybody's stories because I don't want them to see that
the
EKU
university.
is
I think because like if something like that happened, then that would kind of take everything away.
Right.
Like everyone would delete you delete it
Yeah.
automatically and stuff.
Yeah.
I think keeping it how you're doing it is really smart because especially for the flash stuff that you need to like get done, like you need to turn in your application for housing today. Like
Yeah.
you need to all that stuff.
Yeah.
It's perfect for that. It's perfect for those reminders because we're already there, and that's like a perfect way to communicate those quick messages with us. Yeah.
All right, so speaking of college, we'll come back and get to questions in just a second. I do want to transition. I want to talk about the emerging networks too,
Yeah.
right? So let's transition. We're going to use that college point to talk about Yik Yak.
Yes.
First of all, how many here are on Yik Yak? Okay, a few of you.
Okay, few.
Obviously, you're with college. You kind of it's huge.
Love
Talk
Yik Yak.
about Yik Yak.
Like ICAC's awesome.
And yet, I will say, I've never felt more dirty.
Well, that was about the thing I was gonna say. So like, if you're not in college, currently Yik Yak will do nothing for you. Like it's just really, it's pretty dirty content. It's all text, by the way. It's no photos. But it's just the stuff that people think about in college and that people post about in college. And what I love most about Yik Yak is that it is not based off of popularity. At the end of the day, what you post on Yik Yak is content, and the content is king. There are no profiles on Yik Yak. There's no way for you, if Kanye West goes on Yik Yak and posts something, he has just as much of a chance to get the most upvoted yak of the day that I do. We have the same exact, so it's all based off what we're posting. And I think Yik Yak is super useful for the times, like, for example, when the school had a power outage, the first place that everyone went to was Yik Yak because everyone was making jokes because our president is named Bill Powers, and so that's and so everyone was like, that's just where we talk about it, and because it's anonymous, and because there are no profiles and everything, people feel a lot more at ease to talk about these problems. And when I talk about like people in college feeling sad or depressed or wanting to find somewhere to vent, Yik Yak is one of the networks that they do that on. It's Yik Yak and Tumblr are kind of the two main ones that they would feel comfortable posting. Also Reddit occasionally, just because there's no sort of way to track it back to you. There's no profile for people to follow you on. If you post a yak every single day, no one would know. No one knows that you're on Yik Yak every day. You're just a different account every day. It's really, I love it.
Is there any, so, you know, it's intriguing, right?
Yeah.
I think as a social media professional, it's intriguing to understand what it is and how it works, but is there any play for brands in Yik Yak?
Sure.
Steve?
So, in short, it's kind of really hard for that to happen.
Because there's no profile.
There's no profile. You also can only post within a 10-mile radius. So, I mean, your network is that at the time. When it comes to Yik Yak, how I've done it, so I mean, I do like I host like a speaker series for my school, and so one of the last things we do before an event is post on Yik Yak. And we kind of game the system. We have everyone in my fraternity upvote the yak as soon as I post it, so then it automatically becomes popular. But that's besides the point. So what we do is we do that, and what I've noticed that really works on Yik Yak is stuff that's short, quick, really gets the point across, and has like caps lock for free food. Like if you like mention that, like you'll get a lot of college students interested, and a lot of people will want to comment to remember it or take a screenshot of it. I think it only really works right now in terms of brands is if you were on campus somewhere.
But it almost seems like you could do, if you are a retailer,
sure,
with the presence on campus or nearby,
yeah,
that you could potentially do something, and maybe it's as simple as just offering discounts or promoting something.
Yeah, so the thing about Yik Yak though is that I think, I'm not entirely sure, so don't quote me on this, but it's either a certain yak threshold or a threshold in the terms of the time in which it would go away. So I mean, you'd really have to have like a flash sale. And then if you get -5 downvotes on a Yik Yak post, it automatically deletes. So it kind of is a way for the community to monitor itself. A lot of people talk about Shakeup with bullying, and I haven't experienced that at all at my college, because people, when that happens, people download it and it goes away. For the middle school and high school campuses, Shakeup implemented a geofence around them so that people that are on the campus cannot use it. I think that was a really smart idea to kind of get around that. And I mean, but honestly, on any social network, there can be bullying. You can always make a fake Facebook profile account or a fake Twitter account and do that to somebody.
Talk about maybe 2 sentences on plague.
Okay.
Is there an opportunity for it to continue? Do you feel like it's fading?
Plague is getting 2 sentences. So plague is getting extremely popular in Europe. It is having a difficult time catching on in the U.S., but I feel like there is an immense opportunity for growth with it.
I personally, I love the model. I love the viral model that it's put into place.
So I guess we can describe plague for people who don't know. So plague, basically, you post content. It's similar to, it's kind of based off of a plague. So what would happen is that you get content in a certain area, right? So you kind of get infected when you go to a certain area. And then you right swipe or left swipe the content. If you right swipe the content, then you share that with your area, so you infect the other people within your radius. And so for situations like me traveling here from San Francisco to here, I can infect Atlanta with content from San Francisco, and vice versa. And so it's kind of literally a post going viral.
But it's really cool because they then show a geographical map and these kind of heat waves where it's traveling, and so you can see something literally go around the world, which is
It's pretty cool.
And then I do want to get a couple more questions in, but I want to last but not least, in the last week, in the last few days, lots of discussion about Jot and the opportunity that it provides. So briefly explain what's unique about it in terms of its, again, school targeting, but then also the ability to be offline, not on Wi-Fi, not on a cell network, and use ultimately low-frequency Bluetooth mesh networks.
Yeah, so kind of how Jot came to my attention was that it was posted in a TechCrunch article that got pretty popular earlier this week. And what Jot is it's a messaging application. I guess that's like at its core what it is. But what it has a lot of features that it borrows from a lot of different applications that make it really interesting, especially for middle school and high school students. So for one, you don't need a network, as he stated. You can use low-frequency Bluetooth to chat with people. That's not necessarily new. That happened with FireChat. That was a very popular application. So they have that. You can have self-destructing messages, both photos and text, that go away. So that kind of takes a little bit from CyberDust and a little bit from Snapchat. And then you also have on there the ability to add people from a school. So like you list your school, and then you go and get people that say they go to that school, and then you can add them to your contact list that easily. And so it works, I think so far it works really well for high schools and middle schools. It seems like that's a really good target for them. For colleges, I've had maybe 10 people add me in the past few days, and I mean, UT has 55,000 students, so I have no clue who these people are. So that doesn't really work for me. It seems like still it's more like a contacts, based off the contacts for me. But I can see that overall it's super important that the app is big in high schools. And one thing, it's a minor thing, but when you first download Jot, and I don't know if you noticed this, did you notice what were the options to sign in?
Phone number
or
cell number.
Instagram.
Instagram.
It did not have Facebook. It is one of the first apps I've seen that hasn't been a photo sharing app to have Instagram as a login, and I think that's really telling because they're targeting that market that's ingrained in Instagram right now, and I think that's really, really smart of them. It's a minor thing, but people like seeing signing in with Facebook, even though they're obviously Facebook owns Instagram. It just makes the app seem cooler. That's with Instagram.
Okay, in the back.
What is, I'm trying to find Jot, I've never heard of it.
JOTT.
And then it works on, so it doesn't need to have connections.
Basically
right
mesh.
Now, let's say we're in a place that has terrible connection.
You can use it now for low frequency Bluetooth. You can also use it.
How far does that go? So let's say I'm at, I don't know, Lollapalooza, and I want to talk to someone on the other side, and I talk to someone on the other side, a mile away.
I can't remember what it was, but I think
it's relatively close. And again, the intent is you're
classroom
in school,
setting. Yeah,
you want to
classroom
send
setting.
a message to somebody within school or even on campus.
Yeah. But I think FireChat is able to go that far. So I don't think it's out of the question for that.
I'm just worried I'm going to lose it.
Oh.
Talk to you.
I'd get fire chat if you want to do something like that.
Fire chat?
Yeah.
Okay, now in the very back of the room.
So full disclosure, I work on one of the Snapchat Discover channels.
Oh, cool.
What
Sorry about that.
with knowing that they're trying to keep advertising in there to keep it out of the utilitarian part of Snapchat.
Agreed.
GitGap doesn't really have doesn't have
Yeah.
a monetization model today. From your point of view, when it gets to the point of they've got to make money one way or another, would your preference be ads, pervasive ads inside of the experience, or 99 cents a month, or whatever the subscription rate would be? I'd be interested to hear kind of your friend's opinion on kind of paying for access to things versus whether it's sharing your data, looking at ads, whatever it happens to be.
I don't think too many people, like my age at least, are really concerned about the whole data thing. I think that kind of like gets blown out of proportion quite a bit in terms of like sharing your data and companies having your data. For me, like a company like Google or Facebook having all that data on me is just kind of my fee for admission to kind of use their site and use it, or else I could like use LO or something. When it comes to Snapchat, I actually had no problem with their advertising within the stories. I didn't really see that to be an issue. They kind of did, I guess, to make it a bit more. They wanted to make it a bit more low key and hidden within Discover. I think what they need to do is start making the advertising a lot more creative. They've done it with like McDonald's had a wonderful advertisement on there, but I think they need to make it interactive. Like they have the ability to make like a really cool interactive advertisement. They have an ability. They have the ability to like make advertisements customizable with how you can like share and resend advertisements. I think they can do a lot from the creative side, and I'd be really interested to see kind of as Discover 2.0 rolls out with like this whole like presidential 2016 thing. I'm interested to see how they do it. I just think that they can make it a lot more interactive and shareable, for sure.
So in closing, it's interesting to me. What I'm personally finding is that there are, where I consider myself to be kind of a gadget guy. I love to play with new gadgets, new pieces of hardware, new phones, just to try them out, right? And it almost seems like the younger generation, that same sort of mentality exists, but less around the gadgets themselves and more around networks. And
Absolutely.
so this desire, where I think most of us look at, companies and networks as this, which is going to reign supreme and forever. I think that so many of the millennials are like, no, I want a network that I can play on this year, and next year I'm going to try something different.
Yeah, I believe that Facebook and Instagram and Twitter can all coexist in their own areas and their own slots, and they'd be perfectly fine. I would say, just like as a company, the one thing that you should do is go on Product Hunt every day and see what the new social media network app is that they're posting about, and then go and register your company's name for it. I think that because you never know, and you don't want to get into a situation where somebody took your brand name from you because they want to screw with you, and then hold it hostage. Yeah.
All right, Andrew, thank you so much for your time. Everybody, please.
Andrew, what was it? Plague?
PLAG and then 2 stars because they had the copyright claim.